where you interact with people, with stakeholders, and that still needs to be done person to person. I mean, we need to have organizations like that, and also physical work that isn't predictable, that is sort of randomized. Those are protected jobs. The highest level of jobs, the jobs that are not going to be automated, are jobs that fit into two categories. One is managing other people, working with other people, collaboration and teamwork, and two, applying specific expertise that requires intellectual capacity to solve problems, to think critically. So across that spectrum, when you go backwards and you say, well, what kind of school should I go to? What should my plan be? Our focus increasingly is, how do we teach kids to think? How do we teach kids to react quickly, to make their arguments, to listen to other arguments, and then to decide for themselves how to proceed. And I think that we're seeing that the rate of change is accelerating. Today is the slowest rate of change in our lifetime, for sure. It's only going to get faster. And each change seems to be accelerating the next change coming down the pipe. So in this world, change is inevitable. And I think you have to assume that anything is subject to a very finite limitation on longevity.
Yeah, I think I saw an interesting quote from, I don't know whether it was your quote, but I saw it in a presentation that you gave, and it was that it's not the big eating the small, it's the fast eating the slow.
Yeah, everything today is about speed. Time is without doubt our scarcest resource. Everything is about not how fast you presently are performing your business, but how fast you're getting faster. How are you accelerating as opposed to measuring velocity? Because if you're not getting faster, there are hundreds of companies, many of them at 1871, that are just looking at the opportunities and the inefficiencies in the way that you perform your business and saying, I can do it better, faster, cheaper, more easily, more accessibly. And that's how the world is working today. Very few businesses, whether it's medicine, education, just about anything, they're all under attack, and that attack is accelerating.
So on that, the future of work, where I read a statistic that by the year 2020, which is not too far away, there's going to be somewhere in the vicinity of 1.2 billion people worldwide that consider themselves digital nomads. And we're seeing the rise of places like Chiang Mai, that apparently has 30 to 40,000 digital nomads there at any point in time. Do you see that trend continuing to grow, that people are going to be moving and working remotely?
I think that the gig economy, the idea that you'll work sporadically, you'll work. First of all, I completely agree that the models for traditional offices, for traditional central cities, even though we continue to move across the world into more and more people within cities, I think the model of the traditional offices will break down, because we're walking around powerfully connected. We're on call 24/7. We're going to be working whenever and wherever. And so that's going to be very different. But I think the idea of flitting from job to job, sort of the gig economy, or this idea of the shared economy, is very problematic, because I think the math doesn't work. I think it turns out that those people are going to be serfs, making very little money, having very little protection in terms of medical or insurance or anything like that. And that's not likely to lead to more income equality. It's likely to lead to whole populations of unhappy people. I say all the time that multitasking is a big lie that we tell to kids, or the kids tell to us, that they can watch video and play music and talk to their friends and chat and still do their homework. And we know better, but you have to be a certain age in order to appreciate that. And focus is tough. We have a very open environment here, but we also had to create spaces that were quiet spaces and separate spaces, because we were seeing people literally sort of leave the environment in order to go get work done. And so I think that we'll work in a lot of different places, and I think that that's fine. but I think we still need to address the attention deficit and the concentration issues. And, when we see a lot of places that call themselves incubators that are actually just sort of glorified co-working spaces, it's also hard to assemble all the resources that really add value to people in the course of an environment like this.
So that's interesting. You talk about glorified co-working spaces. What's the differentiator between an incubator or a glorified co-working space, as you put it?
Well, I think that most of the co-working spaces are for-profit enterprises that are essentially looking for, how do I take rent from these companies and pay my bills and make a profit? We're a nonprofit. Our job is to make these companies successful. So in a typical co-working space, you won't have thousands of events that are educational events. You won't have thousands of mentors. This year, our mentors will provide 800 mentors will provide about 10,000 hours of one-on-one coaching. You won't have all of the sort of infrastructure. The technology here is all free. All the connectivity is free. And that's just a model. That's an ecosystem model. That's not really a commercial venture model. So when we see places, even like WeWork and some other places that have been, remarkably successful marking up, retail space, how long that model will be successful will depend on how healthy the economy remains. I think it'll be very difficult for them to pay for expensive office rent and mark it up for startups or for freelancers as soon as the economy softens a little bit and those freelancers aren't so free with their cash.
Right. So I think I talked to a lot of people. A lot of people ask me about what they should be recommending to their kids to study, and some are saying they need to get 2 degrees or 3 degrees, and I think a lot of people, certainly in my age group with young children, are concerned because they keep hearing about automation and robotics, and so I mean, how do we demystify the future for those people that feel like it's just moving at breakneck speed and they just simply can't keep up?
Well, I think first of all that we tell people who ask that specific question that there is no single silver bullet. It's not simply coding, although coding is an important way to teach your kids how to think and how to plan and how to organize their thoughts. And whether it's coding that in a year won't matter because, Fortran and Cobalt and all these different forms of code don't mean anything today, but the methodology and the thought processes are, in fact, important. But what I would tell these people is that, I'd go back to what I said before, which is it's about problem solving, it's about working with other people, it's about critical thinking, but mostly it's about presenting yourself and your arguments effectively. And that's a set of communication skills. And if you look at the way people are behaving today, those are diminishing more rapidly than anything. You see people sitting around, whether with earpods or with, their face in their phone or whatever. And we are losing that capability. We are losing that connection in many respects. But look, I don't know, I don't know that there is going to be an answer. And I think that, frankly, I'm not so concerned about the kids, because the kids are digital natives. They can get this. We're the immigrants. What I'm concerned about is people who are 50 and up, because they're not going to do us the courtesy of dying when they're 60. And honestly, we need to give them new skills, or else they're going to be useless in the workforce. And they're going to be unemployable, but they're going to be around for 20 more years. And very few companies, very few organizations or governments are even remotely committed to upskilling the existing workforce, the employed workforce, forget the unemployed, the employed workforce. If they're not upskilled with these new digital skills and capabilities, they won't be employable much longer. And if they're not employable, we're headed for some real difficulties. Yeah.
I see the Ziggy Starman piece behind you, so that's a good segue into the art collection. Prolific art collection, over 1,600 pieces. I've been through the website. The website's a bit retro, I've got to say.
Well, I actually use it because we one of the things that we do is we make donations each year to schools and to museums, and it's a handy way for them to sort of cull the collection and say, we'd like this piece or that piece. We just, as a matter of fact, I think you mentioned we did an auction recently, and that is to sort of replenish our foundation, which then gives grants and scholarships to practicing artists. So that's part of the whole process.
So I'm a bit of a Sunday hack art collector myself. So I do appreciate not to the level of your collection. So how do you collect 1,600 pieces, and obviously you donate them, and it's a philanthropic purpose that it serves, but what do? Do you visit galleries? Do you see pieces?
Well, again, this is exactly, I mean, I feel like my life is structured in the same way in the business context, in the investment context, and in the art context. And the first word is always, how do you apply a filter that makes these things manageable? And honestly, if we tried to keep up with all of the art that was being produced, if we tried to keep up with dead artists and living artists, if we tried to keep up with abstract artists and landscape artists, so we have a very finite set of filters. It's living artists, it's the figure, it's contemporary realist art. When you slice it down to that, it becomes almost manageable. And then you need to use the shows, these big art shows, as sort of concentrators and conveners. It's very efficient for me to go to Miami. I'll be in Miami in December. I walk those shows in a day and a half. I see maybe 200 galleries. And, because of the web, because of the internet, we are constantly solicited for new work by the artists in the collection. We generally try to find new artists and not go deep with artists that we already own a good example of their work. But it's a business. And when I say it's a business, I mean it's 10 or 20 hours a month devoted to trying to keep up with it and be responsive to various things that are going on. And we work with galleries in maybe a dozen cities. We work with museums in maybe a dozen cities and in 4 or 5 countries. And the goal, again, is to promote the careers of these artists. And also, by the way, to support them while they're trying to make a living and while they're trying to become recognized. Artists, it's a very hard living. It's very much entrepreneurial in the sense that you sit down there with a blank canvas, and it's no different than sitting down there and saying, I'm going to start a business. And so, I feel a great affinity to them. I also love to have the physical art here because the digital world can become very sterile very quickly. We learned that at Flashpoint. So having physical art and having the kids understand that there are levels and ways of excellence that aren't simply something you do with your fingers and your keyboard was important. It was an important message.
Yeah. Excellent message. And I do love that Starman piece behind you. Big Bowie fan. So, Howard, it's been a pleasure talking with you today. I really appreciate your time, and hopefully we can take some of your experiences into our Australian ecosystem.
Great. Well, I enjoy it, and a lot of the information is available at tullman.blogspot.com, and then at my website, which is just tullman.com. But thanks for the opportunity, and it was great to meet you virtually, and we will talk to you again soon.
It's my pleasure. Thanks, Howard.
Bye.